It is the year 2472, and the Earth has suffered a great calamity. Hundreds of years of popular culture have vanished. Without the sacred films and texts for guidance, civilization is devoid of anything cool. Then, 3 incubation chambers are unearthed, and from within, men from the time of the great blockbusters emerge. Now, through highly interesting conversations, they share invaluable insight about what once was. The movies, the shows, the comics, toys, and books. This is
The Hyperspace.
Podcasting in the 25th century.
Welcome in, podcast pioneers, to the Hyperspace. Podcasting in the 25th century, the interweb's first and still only podcast. My name's Matt.
I'm Jared.
I'm Mike.
Well, look who decided to join us this week, Mike.
No, don't even.
Well, hello, Mr. Fancy Pants.
Okay, so, Matt has kind of a rule on the show. If we're going to be talking about physical media or DVDs or anything that you hold in your hand and put into a player, he's not going to be part of it.
I tell you, it actually makes today's conversation a little more difficult, but I'm going to weave around that. But
okay.
But no, how'd last week go without me here?
Oh, it was great.
Best ever?
No, probably top 3. Oh yeah, you'll see for yourself.
Well, it was a little bit of a hiatus for me, but I'm back, and I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about tonight. And we were kind of going back and forth on tonight's topic, and I have to tell you, there was a lot of good ones thrown out there, but I've kind of been waiting to talk about this one. I'm kind of excited about it.
Well, what is that we're going to be talking about tonight, Matt?
Well, since we grew up in the golden age of entertainment, not all of it belonged in the golden age, but, just like mac and cheese, which certainly isn't considered a quality food, it's good comfort food. It's
Correct.
almost a guilty pleasure, some might say. So we're going to talk about some of our guilty pleasure movies that we hold dear and are unabashedly unashamed to watch whenever they come on.
I am all about this, and I actually had to think kind of hard about this because I was, I think if I like something, then
You celebrate it.
obviously
You watch it.
that means it's good, right?
So, why don't we define? Jared, why don't you define what you think qualifies as a guilty pleasure movie or TV show or whatever?
Well, it's something where perhaps the outside objective viewer would look at it and say, man, that is really crappy. But you're like, no, I like it. But you do so recognizing that most other people don't.
I think that's spot on.
I feel like it's more you watch something that you like and you acknowledge that it's bad, but you don't care.
I think you're both right on the money.
Sure.
But I'm clearly more right.
No. Well, see, Mike says that because most of the thing Mike's likes,
Yes, me and my clone.
most of the thing that
Everything is
that
just a
Mike
guilty pleasure
like
at that
is-
point, under
is a
that
guilty
criteria.
pleasure. Yes.
Whatever.
But come on, we pick on Mike. But listen,
Some of these titles that we say tonight are probably gonna be familiar to those who listen to the show frequently, but I don't care.
And I have a question for Mike later that goes back many years. But anyway, yeah, I think we should dive in here. I've got a couple, but I'm really anxious to hear what you guys come up with.
I'll kick it off then.
Do it.
In no particular ranking order, I'm just going to throw some out there. So I'm going to start with The Beastmaster. Mark Singer's classic, almost his pure calling card. If you didn't watch V, you probably saw him in The Beastmaster if you grew up in the 80s or 90s TBS every
That's
Saturday
true.
or Sunday.
Yes, always on the weekends. You know, I actually saw Beastmaster for the first time in middle school in like English class, and we were all surprised in the best ways with the flash of nudity that the Beastmaster contains.
That's
You
right.
know, I have,
Tanya Roberts.
Yeah.
Never seen that movie in its entirety.
Really? Never in its entirety?
No, I did see the trailer in the theater, and there's a shot where a guy is about to throw a kid into like a fire, and that really freaked me out because I was, a kid when I saw it. And
I mean, this movie was really riding the coattails of Conan and just
it
trying
was
to.
one of those movies that was kind of an unexpected hit, wasn't it?
It was, I think, a cult classic. I don't know how well it did in the box office. Maybe it screamed. I don't know, but it certainly became a must watch every time it came on. And you watch it, and it's just a bad movie. It's not shot well. It's the acting is B level at best, but I still love it. I still love every part of it.
Yeah, it's it is definitely riding the coattails of that early 80s fantasy explosion. But it was certainly, I would have, if you stack it up against kind of the Conan ripoffs of the day, I'd definitely place it behind, like, say, Dragon Slayer.
Yeah. Well, Dragon Slayer I thought was a great movie.
No,
I don't think that's a...
Yeah, Dragon Slayer I probably wouldn't lump in with the turds of the day. But I think Beastmaster is probably the best of the turds.
I think you're right. And it was funny because I had watched V, on television where I saw Mark Singer myself for the first time. So when I saw Beastmaster, I was like, hey, that's the guy from V. I'm watching this. And, I bought right into it. And I have to tell you, Beastmaster had some pretty graphic for the time, for me at least, scenes that were pretty vicious. I remember that one guy getting wrapped up in those like bat wings and got like digested, and they opened it up and nothing but soup and bones.
Yes.
So,
yeah. All that early 80s PG violence that really pushed the boundary.
Every weekend it was on some cable channel to watch and enjoy.
Do you know a little known fact? I believe there were several direct-to-video sequels.
Well, yeah, I was just about to say there was 2 sequels. Well, first of all, it was directed by Don Coscarelli, who also did the Phantasm series.
Oh, okay, and founded Costco as well.
Yeah, he also did Bubba Hotep.
So it's on my list today. Oh, that's fantastic. You can see where my brain goes.
He's a cult. And also, he did a movie called John Dies at the End, which I've heard is actually really good. But anyway, there was 2 sequels. Hold on, let me see. And a television series. But I think
I remember the television series. Yeah, it was really brief and bad.
There was one where he, through the portal of time, where he goes, surprise, to modern day,
the present day.
Did he
Los
join
Angeles?
Did he join the Battlestar crew on their sport bikes and explore the modern world?
Carrie Wooer.
Oh, okay, I remember her.
Total hottie, and Sarah Douglas was in it.
Oh, she was Ursa from Superman too.
Yeah,
and that must have been a great show.
James Avery, the father from, what's that show? Prince of Bel-Air was in it.
So that sequel must have been in the 90s.
It had to have been.
Yeah, it wasn't Don Carcilla. Didn't have anything to do with it. And
was Mark Singer still the Beastmaster?
Yeah, he stayed in all of them. And the Eye of Braxis, man, you look at that cover. That is straight, hardcore, straight.
I think I've seen one. I know I've seen one because I saw an aged, ripped out Mark Singer still in his furloin.
Well, yeah, and this one was released in hold on, 1996.
Yeah, I remember.
And it had Tony Todd, the great Tony Todd.
Yeah.
Casper Van Diem.
Oh
God, the king of the
staple.
And hold on. David Warner was in it. The late David Warner. Of course,
Chancellor Gorkon.
he would do. I mean, he was a great actor, but he would also apparently do
Pay the rent.
anything they would give him money for. He would show up.
As we say on the podcast, when an actor's career starts to go downhill, they have to pay the rent.
Paying the rent.
But he was always in something though. I don't think he really had to pay the rent. I mean, he was in between his turns.
Well,
he was in something like good. So anyway, and also had the dad from Good Times in it.
Yeah, it did. Oh, he did.
Oh yeah, he was like he got
His
killed.
partner. It was his partner. No.
Yeah.
Well, now I don't have to watch it, I guess.
And Rip Torn was the bad guy. Oh, it's all. I know. It's amazing. All right, Jared or Mike?
Man.
Throwing out there.
Okay, Mike, do you want to go next?
Sure. This is one I've talked about many times, and I have to say, of all my guilty pleasure movies, this one is definitely it, and that would be Jaws 3. Because that movie is terrible, but I love it. I love watching it. It's just so bad. I mean,
It's so
just-
campy and terrible.
It's so bad. It's so dumb, but it's so. Everyone who's in it is selling it, man. I mean, they are. It's got Dennis Quaid. It's got Lou Gossett Jr.
Yep.
It's got Leah. What was the mom from Back
Leah
to the Future?
Thompson.
Leah Thompson. That's
Leah
right.
Thompson's in it. It's also got that guy. He was Manable.
Yeah. Yep, Manimal. That's right.
I can't remember his name,
the English actor.
but he was. Everyone in that movie is just going for it, and
Yeah, you're right. They really buy into it and take it serious.
yeah, and it's just
Yeah.
and it just it's just so ridiculous.
Did that? I mean, it was a precursor to a lot of movies like The Meg and Piranha, like down.
I don't know. This was way before those.
No. But I'm saying like movies that are so absurd. Sharknado, like all these absurd movies
Yeah,
that
but
the
those
actors
movies.
just take serious, but they're just ridiculous.
No, I think those movies are always intended to be camp. I think what about Jaws 3 is they really were trying.
They're like,
bad.
man,
We got this one. You know why? 3D.
Yeah, and the 3D is just ridiculous. But it was originally supposed to be a comedy, Jaws 3 People Zero.
yes, I heard about that.
And
Jaws
there's a
3,
movie-
People's Hero.
There's a movie poster for it that they made, like a concept
That's
poster.
absurd. That's just absurd.
Jaws
So,
3, People Zero.
Yeah. Like my favorite of the thing that really pulls that movie together for me is the scene where the guy, Manable guy, where he gets killed, the shark crushes.
In his scuba diving.
Yeah, he was scuba diving. He gets crushed to death in the jaws in the shark's giant.
And you get the perspective
maw.
from in the jaws, right?
Yeah, and the shark is crushing him to death, but doesn't swallow him. So at
Because
the
he
end of the
stays in
movie,
there.
yeah, then the movie, he's still holding the hand grenade, and they see the hand grenade and they pull the pin. But what's really great is before that happens, he eats someone else. The shark eats someone else. So does it like kind of work this guy past the other dude? Like if you have like some pasta and
Yes.
you're
Pick 'em
eating
out.
like
Pick 'em
a
out.
sandwich later, do you just leave the pasta in your cheek while you're chewing up the sandwich?
That's why they keep getting all those extra teeth coming in, because they just don't take care of their teeth. They just rot out.
Yeah,
with
they just rot
people and
out.
grenades.
I mean, come on. Haven't you ever had a piece of steak hanging in your molars and the next morning you pull it out and chew it? Come on. Everybody does that.
It's got bad effects. Plus the
Oh.
the lens on the camera was terrible and everything's like hazy.
What about one of my favorite shots in the film is the last shot when the superimposed dolphins jump
Dolphins. Oh my
on.
gosh.
And it's obvious these dolphins were never in the same frame as anything else.
No, they're not like proportion.
Like just
they're
horribly cut out and matted and thrown on the shot.
Yes. Oh, it's terrible.
Almost on sticks in front of the camera lens.
It looks like that. I mean,
It's
it
bad.
is.
and
Oh.
the score sounds like a straight up TV score. It's just terrible.
Which,
Anyway,
pretty
it's funny to think that the score for 3 and 4 have both gotten like, prestigious CD releases from those, kind of those boutique labels like
Yeah,
La
it's-
La Land.
They're not the one for the Jaws of Revenge. My favorite is the end credits is basically dun 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 dun
Yes.
dun 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 for like
Over
five
and over
5
again.
minutes. Dun 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 dun.
Wow.
That's funny. Jaws 3 is a good one, man.
Well, I'm
Jared?
gonna stick kind of in the same era, and we've actually we've dedicated an episode of this podcast to this movie, and I'm gonna say Superman 4: The Quest for Peace.
Oh man.
Listen, it
God.
is terrible. It
It
is
is-
terrible. There's no way around it. But listen,
so
I'm
bad
gonna
it's
say
great.
this.
So
I'm gonna
bad it's
say this.
great.
It's better than Superman 3. Because
Well-
I hate Superman 3. I hate
yeah,
it with every fiber of
you
my
have
being.
anger for Superman 3.
Superman 3 lives in my heart because I watched it a lot as a kid and I was okay with it. But Superman 4 was always just trash on the TV that came on. It was never.
The thing about
great.
Superman 4 is I feel bad for Christopher Reeve when I watch it.
Yeah,
Because that's another
he
instance
tried.
where he's selling it, man.
Yeah.
man,
is
he does.
selling it.
I mean, but if you want to watch, in every movie he did, the last two being the questionable entries, Christopher Reeve never. You never think he's
Bones it
not
in.
Superman,
No, he went to work every time.
and that's one of the reasons I can still watch The Quest for Peace is because of him. And I think there's a few scenes in that movie that are really good, but by and large, it is terrible.
I have to.
Well,
I mean, knowing what we know about the movie and like the behind the like the cut scenes and stuff, it makes me wonder what they were doing on production. Like, of course,
they were
the
spending the money somewhere else. Is
the-
what they were doing.
The famous cut scene with whatever pre-nuclear man was that ridiculous music.
man.
like a scene so bad that they actually cut it from
But who
what they
thought,
released.
But like as they're pulling this together in a primitive edit to show the producers and the studio, this is what we have. Who in the right mind put that like temp placeholder music over it, saying they'll love this, they're gonna buy into this scene?
No.
It was the worst.
And that scene was not. It was probably not inexpensive to shoot because they're
It's a
trashing.
big set they made.
They're trashing cars.
Yeah.
and it's
Pyrotechnics, all
You know,
kinds of stuff in it.
And when you watch the deleted scene, it does. You're like, where would this go?
I know it
doesn't
it's
make
like
any sense.
It's like it's from a completely different.
Yeah, it's
film.
like, how would this have even fit into the movie?
Yeah.
I mean,
at one
Were
point
they trying to make it a bizarro Superman, but they
I
just
guess
kind of twisted it into?
I guess that's what they were going for.
yeah, because they use Superman's DNA.
You know, the thing about Superman 4, it takes all about 5 seconds before you realize you're in trouble. That
Who is-
opening scene in space, you're like, even the opening credits, you're like, something's wrong.
Who's the
here.
actor that was in that movie? He was Lex Luthor's nephew.
John Cryer.
John
John
Cryer.
Cryer. He's the worst. Oh no.
Yeah, I know.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Oh, no.
I hate that surfer dude.
I can't stand it. Every time I that's part of the reason why that movie is so intolerable. I cannot listen to this guy with that ridiculous California accent. It drives me nuts.
Oh, it's completely horrendous.
Oh
Completely.
no. Oh, so bad. That's a good call though.
Yeah, but somehow if I I don't really sort of stumble across anything anymore because I don't have cable, but occasionally I will put in that Blu-ray for no good purpose other
How's
than
it look?
It looks okay. I mean, it looks as good as it can. It was obviously the effects are horrific.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with the
Oh, you actually have the Blu-ray for it?
yeah, I have you do too.
You're that one that has the Blu-ray.
You have the Blu-ray. It's
No, I have the DVD. I don't have the Blu-ray. I never got the Blu-ray.
Oh, you never bought the Blu-ray set?
No, I got
Okay.
the DVDs.
No, I have the Blu-ray set.
I got that big metal
Yeah.
case.
But yeah, so once every 10 years I'll throw it in and watch some of the special features just to remind myself why this is such a terrible film. But it's Superman 4. That's low-hanging fruit, but it's a guilty pleasure.
Here's one that again, just like Beastmaster, I watched it every time it came on. And if I watched more TV and caught it, I probably would watch it today. And that's 1985's Enemy Mine.
Oh.
Now, Enemy Mine is probably not looked at overall as a horrible movie by people, but when you watch it, you can just see the flaws and the problems it had. And you can see that they're trying to make Dennis Quaid into this amazing, like, big-time sci-fi movie star. And it just kind of came and went. But it had a huge lifespan on network.
Yeah,
Cable. And it just became a cult classic. And it's not a great movie. But it was an over budget. You know, I think it was foreign shot. I think it was shot in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. And but I just loved it. I loved Enemy Mine because I loved all sci-fi back then. So if it was sci-fi, I'd watch it. And Enemy Mine, just like Beastmaster, seemed to pop on all the time when I was a kid.
Yeah, but Enemy Mine, I think they had effects done by ILM.
Yep.
Who are at the height of their practical effects powers back in the mid '80s.
But it didn't. But even though, I mean, look, even though ILM had their hand in this, it's still not great. But that's it. It's okay that it's not great. It's like I accept that it's not great. In fact, when they get on the planet, when they're in space, it's worse. When they're on the planet, it's not bad. But in space, the effects are just kind of pure cheese.
Well, I really like the makeup on Louis Gossett Jr.
I just want to interject. Again, this is another movie I have never seen.
Really? You've never seen Enemy Mine?
No, I never seen it.
I can't believe that. I'm shocked. I'm legitimately shocked that you've never seen Enemy Mine.
Well, maybe we'll do that one someday as part of the
I really don't want to give
podcast.
too much away then because I don't want to spoil it for Mike because I actually enjoy it. I think it's a pretty entertaining movie. It falls down a lot in certain ways. I think Dennis Quaid did an okay job. Louis Gossett Jr. is great.
Well, it's the second movie that he shows up.
Hot off Jaws 3, straight into Enemy Mine.
So I saw Louis Gossett Jr. on the red carpet recently, and he looked really good for his age, considering. And the interviewer, asked him what his favorite movie of all time was that he's done, and he's been in a ton of stuff. And he said Enemy Mine. Enemy Mine was his absolute favorite movie that he was a part of.
Really?
Yeah. You know what? I can imagine that.
Was it Jaws 3?
It was Jaws 3. I can imagine in like 1984, 85, early 5.
We should do it just a Dennis Quaid, Jaws. I mean, Louis Gossett Jr.
Just a fun fact.
Just their movies. Yeah. We're celebrating the duo.
But think about this, right? You got a script.
Abbott and Costello of the 80s.
Jedi had just finished up, been in the theaters the year before they were shooting this. Everyone's probably excited that they have maybe the next big sci-fi, blockbuster. And it was just kind of average. The score was unimpressive. I think if they had someone scoring it better, it might have a bigger hit, better impact. But in the end, it just kind of fizzled and went to TV cult fandom. But it was a fun movie. I'm not gonna say anything. If you haven't seen Enemy Mine, recommend it at some point, Mike. I'm not gonna say anything about it. We're gonna watch it together and we're gonna enjoy the different pieces of it.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Mike, you're next.
All right. Here's one a movie I really like, and it's kind of considered bad. Dredd, Judge Dredd, the one with Stallone.
That was almost on my list, but I figured you'd take it, so I'd leave it to you.
I thought that I saw that movie like 3 times in the theater, and I liked it. But I love the comic book, and I thought it looked like the comic book, like Mega City. Like, okay, I love the Carl Urban Dredd. I think it's great. So when I compare the two, it's like Carl Urban is like Dredd from the comics, but Mega City 1 from the Stallone version is the Mega City from the comics, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Like, if you were to read the comics, you'd see the one from the Stallone movie, but it would be Carl Urban.
Right. So, Mike, let me ask you just your own personal opinion. If Rob Schneider's character was not in that movie,
he makes me laugh in that movie.
I agree. I agree. But do you think that movie would have been taken more serious?
I don't. You know who I think's really good in that movie? Amon Asante.
Great, fantastic in that movie.
He makes the movie work.
He's great.
So great.
I actually think the
whole
cast does a great job. I don't have a problem with the cast. I think
one of my favorite lines in the movies where they're trying to get through the wall and Stallone goes, "There's a madman in the city," and he goes, "What a coincidence! There's a madman outside the city." That makes me laugh.
Max von Sydow is great in it. I think the whole cast is good in it.
What is it? What's her name? Not Diane Lane?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, back then.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Jürgen Prochnow was in it. I mean, it's got great names in it.
It's
Great
really,
names.
and it looks good. The movie looks really good. I love the stuff in the Cursed Earth with the Mean Machine. I love the Mean Machine. They brought him in. The Angels. I think it's a good science fiction movie. I mean, I was kind of really surprised that it did so poorly because when I saw it, I liked it, and I think Alan Silvestri's score for that movie is great.
So
It's a great
all those
score.
elements that we talked about are great. They all work, and I even like Stallone's performance. But do you think that because it was Stallone, it got looked at differently than it would have if it had been like another action hero actor?
I would think at that point it could only. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that character just, can't be. America isn't ready for that character.
Could be.
Well, I heard that, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff in that film, and
Apparently, the director.
Yeah, Stallone didn't get along with the director and was really throwing his weight around, and there were just lots of problems behind the scenes. But I mean, I don't know. I'm no history buff on Dredd, but I know that there were issues. And if you remember the one of the people I used to follow on Facebook, Charles Lippincott, he was involved in the making of that movie, and I followed him on Facebook before he died. And
Oh yeah, I remember.
yeah, and
Right.
he sometimes would drop these nuggets about how that was like his biggest, his great regret, that it just didn't turn out like anyone wanted. So
Well, that's too bad because all the parts and pieces were there. I mean, it's a good looking movie. Like Matt said, it has a really great cast. The story's fine. I mean, I don't know. It just, for whatever reason, it just didn't. But I don't know if that's really a guilty pleasure because I think it's good. I think
Sure.
it's a good movie.
No, I think it qualifies as guilty pleasure. I don't think it's universally regarded as a great movie, but I agree with you. I think it's a fun movie. I watch it if it came on right now, I'd watch it right now. And I'm not saying it's more watchable than the new Dredd, but
They're
think
different movies.
it's just
different movies.
It's like brain sugar. You can just watch that one and enjoy it, and the other one is just
But that's what's great. It's like they're two different types of movies.
I agree. That's a good choice. I think you nailed it.
yeah. Well, I'm going to go back to the TV of my youth, and this is another one considered maybe low hanging fruit, but it's one we've talked about a little bit. I revisited this entire series about 2 years ago on DVD, and my guilty pleasure is The Dukes of Hazzard. It is after watching over the course of a summer all seasons.
How many seasons were there?
Oh crap. I think
You just watched it and you don't know.
I don't know because the seasons are meaningless. How many seasons did the Dukes
There's
of Hazzard
146 episodes. it
Yes.
said. Jeez,
7 seasons.
that's
okay.
crazy.
And
Did you watch the TV movies?
I did. And I actually had to purchase them because they weren't part of the box set I bought.
That's a big fat rip.
Oh, and I will always love the adventures of Bo and Luke Duke, and I can never forget how excited it made me to watch them on Friday nights as a kid.
Yeah, we used to watch it too.
But I tell you what, revisiting it in 2020, there's just no getting around the fact that most of the time it just doesn't hold up.
Well, I don't know how them Duke boys are going to get out of this one.
When I think of the Dukes of Hazzard, I always think of the Alien episode.
Oh yeah, there was an Alien episode.
That must have been late in the seasons.
That
right?
was right after E.T. came out.
Jumping the shark a bit with
Yep, and it's also about the time they switched over to using scale models instead of actual cars to jump. And while I was watching this on DVD a few years ago, I knew this was happening. I didn't know exactly when the switchover occurred, because they would mix it up and use, they'd still use actual cars, but
They
then
probably reuse some shots too.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
sure. Yeah,
I'm
so.
sure they had hours of just, that Charger jumping over the creeks and stuff. But one time they jump over a water tower. And I was like, okay. And the shot looked weird and fake. And I was like, I think I just saw my first model shot. Oh, and then they just came with great frequency.
Once you spot it, you just can't take
You know,
it. You always see it.
My favorite thing about that is when you would see the car land, you would see it hit, and you knew if you look at it, the way that car hits, the car's not drivable anymore.
No.
But they would immediately cut to a shot
Pristine.
of the car, like continuing to drive.
Yes. You can see in almost every jump, the whole frame of the car buckles.
Yeah.
I mean, because they ruin it. I mean, I'm sure they fixed the cars and they just didn't trash them immediately. But, yeah, especially watching with, adult eyes, you can see the frame of the car just bend in half.
Oh yeah, of course.
When they hit. And, but, I got to say, it was fun to revisit. It's certainly not a series that I'm going to go back to every couple of years to pick up what I missed, to get all the nuances, because I mean,
you don't need
no, and it's definitely a product of its time. It's razor thin, but there are some gems in there. But I'm not sorry that I bought it, but it's definitely guilty pleasure for sure.
As we've said before in the podcast, I mean, it was a phenomenon.
Oh, yeah.
And as kids, it was just like we used to play it on the playground at school. I mean,
Yep.
It was Dukes of Hazzard was.
Yes.
And the whole concept of it is the fact that they're on probation because they were running moonshine for their uncle.
Yeah, that's true.
I know.
Yeah, and they can't.
As a kid, I never picked up on
No.
what that was about. Of
And
course.
that's something I picked up on when I should rephrase what I said. That was a nuance I didn't pick up on as a kid that I did as an adult. Like, that's why they couldn't use guns. That's why they're using bow and arrows with dynamite.
Oh.
Because they can't have guns. Because
I
of
wanted a bow and
probation.
arrow so bad because of that show.
Oh yeah,
my
man.
God.
Man,
Can you imagine? Could you driving around with dynamite over all these dirt bumpy roads,
Yeah.
lashed to like the end of an arrow?
Yeah, and then you light it, and use that as a weapon, which is,
Unbelievable.
as we say, much safer than a gun.
God almighty. That's a good one. Dukes of Hazzard's great.
So, yeah. What do you got for us, Matt?
I'm going big. I'm going Star Trek V.
Oh.
The Final Frontier.
You know
Really?
what? Yes.
Yep.
I'm going
I
to
like Star Trek 5.
No, I like it too.
We all like
but
Star Trek V, but I think
look.
universally regarded that movie is the dog of the bunch. And
you can definitely see the cracks all over that thing.
it's just it's an egg that had fallen off the counter several times. But but I'll tell you, and I've said this before, there are some moments in that movie with the cast that I think are some of the best moments of the cast in the entire franchise.
Oh, yeah, that's why the movie works
Yeah.
on the level
And
it does.
There are a lot of heart and a lot of really amazing moments that you get out of the core cast in that movie. And even though the movie is really a forgettable movie, and it's amazing that they let them go on and make Star Trek VI, because that movie, The Final Frontier, was a bit of a dog. But there's some amazing moments, and the plot felt like more of an episode than a movie. Like you'd see
Yes.
like what.
Oh, yeah, I can definitely
Didn't
see
have
that.
a film quality to the
Oh,
the
especially
writing.
with those sterling effects.
Oh, the visual effects, yeah, which are definitely ILM quality.
Yeah.
The
But they-
Enterprise was
but-
lit by fluorescent lighting.
But but if you listen to the sound effects too, they went more Star Wars than they did traditional Star Trek.
Yes,
And they tried to. I think they were nervous about their franchise. I don't think that they had enough confidence in it, and they were trying to change it up a little bit.
Well, that movie had problems.
There were a lot of flaws, and there's a lot of ego in it, and Shatner directed it, and coming off
union issues, budget issues,
there was a ton. And it was interesting reading in his autobiography about that movie and the trials and tribulations and the successes that it also had for him. But that movie really has a place in my heart, and it's not a great one, and I don't really watch it straight through, but I do watch it for moments in that movie.
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek V, the making, the like you said, the stories about the making of it are almost more interesting than the movie itself. Just the whole deleted sequence with the rock monster that appears on the disc, which is horrible.
Isn't that where Galaxy Quest took the idea for the rock monster and put it in just to poke fun at it?
It's possible.
Maybe. I just want to say in defense of this movie, I think the movie works, the story works, and I think the main reason it works is you have a character who has fallen under sway of some sort of alien force, and he goes to the planet, and it turns out it's this not a benevolent being, but, something more sinister. And I think that aspect of it kind of works. I think it's kind of interesting. I think if they'd shown up on the planet and like, guess what? I am God. Then it would have been totally.
I agree with you, but I still think that the story is a bit more of like a TV episode than
you're right.
Well, and if you'd heard Shatner's initial plans, he was going for it. He was going to have, it's God, and we're going to have battles of angels and demons, and everybody around him was like, dude, that is a terrible idea. That is not going to work. So they had to kind of talk him down from there. And I think what they got definitely, it feels like a compromise, because it is. And it turns out, like Mike said, to just be this alien who's imprisoned on this world. But I do like Sybok. I thought Sybok, the character of Sybok,
because he's not evil.
No, he's actually
misguided.
Well, he's actually based. Shatner said on the TV evangelists that were
oh really? I didn't
ubiquitous in the 1980s, who are always and whose careers always ended in scandal. But I don't. He said that's what it was based on, but I don't think that. I don't think Sybok is quite that, because he's definitely a little crazy, but I don't think he's evil. And he was Lawrence Luckenbill was the actor who played him, and I thought he was an interesting character.
Well, I think the opening scene of that movie is really good.
Yes.
I agree. It falls down quickly. But
that movie, the opening scene kind of sets it up as like something good.
You're right. You expected much more. That scene did not belong in that movie. It belongs in another movie.
Yes.
I'm going to throw this out there. Okay, which had the worst Klingons, Star Trek V or the Star Trek Experience?
Oh yeah, those Klingons were kind of strange.
I am Krall.
He's just kind of running, like flying around space, destroying.
Yeah, they're blowing up like Earth probes.
I mean, does he report to anybody?
I think they had a giant like steering wheel for it too in the background. It was not good.
Oh,
but the Klingons were like really like thinly cast in that one. They were not believable, especially when you came off like Star Trek 3, where the Klingons were like amazing.
Yeah. And then they got better again in 6.
They got great in 6.
But the Star Trek 5, it did have I thought the score was great. Another Goldsmith returned to the franchise at that point. Well, visual effects are a train wreck travesty.
Yeah, they certainly are. The shuttlecraft crashing into the shuttle bay.
Oh yeah, but
it's so bad.
Matt, you did say it's amazing because Star Trek V was a bit of a bomb.
Yeah,
and was not well received mostly.
Franchise, how it might be out of gas at this point.
And it's like but they wanted to like finish strong in 1991 for the 25th anniversary.
Well,
And-
the TV show was going strong.
Yes, they
and
had
they
Next
knew
Generation.
they knew they had legs in the franchise. So,
But I think for the 25th anniversary, they wanted to give the original cast a send off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, this is another show, but Star Trek VI is probably the finest send off of that type that's ever been done.
they did it right. They didn't screw it up. Yeah.
Where you're saying, you're saying goodbye to these characters, and it
felt right as they did it. Yeah.
Perfection.
I agree. It was a very rare event, and they did it right. Very, very classy. Very well done.
Yeah,
But yeah, Star Trek V, guys, it exists in my heart as a guilty pleasure. Yours
Oh.
too. You know it.
Okay, Mike, we're coming back around to you.
Okay, well, I think one is definitely The Last Jedi.
What?
I'm
what?
just joking. I hate that movie.
Guilty. Guilty.
Guilty.
Okay, what else you got? Not The Last Jedi.
It seems like we're kind of sticking with a
But
theme
you can.
here, but
I
I'm
mean,
gonna
Anything, man. Throw it out there.
if you. What about music?
Well, I mean-
music?
Starship Troopers.
It's a goodie.
Yeah, but I would say that's one. I think. Well, I mean, sure, but I mean, I think that's a good movie.
I do too.
Do you really think though? I mean, when you talk to other people, I mean, it didn't do well. It wasn't really.
It is what it's supposed to be.
Well, it's definitely a Paul Verhoeven movie.
Oh, jeez, my God.
Okay, well, I'll go with a different one.
No, you don't have to.
No.
It has the right stuff in it because it has those B-level actors.
Well, I got another one.
All right, you want to ditch off a Starship? That's fine.
Come on, Casper Van
talk
Dien. What's up?
I'm gonna go with RoboCop 2.
That's a guilty pleasure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that I think that's terrible. But hey, that's good. That's what we're talking about here.
I don't.
I mean, I like RoboCop.
I don't think I've ever
2.
seen RoboCop 2, to be honest.
Oh wow, no,
Really?
I think RoboCop 2 is not good. It's better than RoboCop 3, but that's not saying anything.
That's garbage.
Yeah.
No, I like RoboCop 2. I like it.
Okay.
I think it's got a great fight at the end between him and RoboCop 2.
Between him and RoboCop 2.
But if you watch it, it's like one of the last times you see stop motion in a movie.
big movie.
They even talk about it in the making of when they're making that movie. They're like, this was, everyone was going digital, and we were the last guys.
Yeah, that was Phil Tippett, right? He did that film.
I'm not, well, probably because it looks amazing.
Yeah.
But no, I like RoboCop 2. I think I hate the score. The score is one of the worst piece of garbage I've ever seen or heard in my life. But that's one of those movies I've never really understood the hatred.
I'm gonna YouTube some scenes. I've never seen it. I have to go watch a few scenes. from
I
RoboCop
just
2.
remember I didn't see it in the theater, but I saw it shortly after it came out on video in the early 90s.
I got a funny RoboCop 2 story.
Okay.
But go ahead.
No, I mean I just don't have much to add to this other than I was disappointed. And
Okay.
it was another one where oddly I read the novelization before I saw the movie. I don't know why I did that or why I remember that, but I do.
Well, also, I think I just like seeing Peter Weller as RoboCop.
Sure. I mean, that's
And
always
Peter Weller is great. Which, by the way, a guilty pleasure movie, which I'm not going to talk about. Speaking of Peter Weller, I mentioned before, is Screamers.
Yeah, you
Got to watch Screamers with Peter Weller. It's a
and Gattaca.
well, he's not in it. Gattaca is not a guilty pleasure. Gattaca is a spectacular movie. It doesn't belong.
So
in
anyway,
this-
I'll tell my funny little story with RoboCop 2. My friend Paul, who's been on the show, actually, he worked at the local theater hall cinema, which I guess that's where I
that's
saw
an achy breaky heart incident.
This is Batman Returns. So we're watching. So the theater's closed. RoboCop 2 opens the next day, and Paul's like, hey, a couple people are going to watch RoboCop 2. Do you want to come over and, watch it? I'm like, of course. So we're watching RoboCop 2. And the story, Matt wouldn't know because he's not seen it. But the story has to do with drugs. There's this drug called Nuke. And, they put it, and that's what RoboCop's trying to stop, the sale of Nuke. So we're all in the theaters, like probably about 10 of us in the theater. So it just cuts to this scene, and everything is like upside down and really blurry and like. So we're all like thinking this is like someone's on a trip.
Yeah, you're seeing a nuke, the effects of Nuke.
So we're all kind of like sitting there, and then all of a sudden, everyone just starts kind of doing that. Everyone kind of like starts like looking at each other, like, is this right? Is this the way it's supposed to be? So we're all kind of like,
you're still going with it though.
Yeah, and after like a minute or two, we're like, this is wrong. Something's wrong. So we go up into the booth. The guy put the reel in upside down.
when the reel switch happened, the next one's upside down.
Yeah, because they put the reels on a big table. There's a big table, and they get them in the reels, and then they spool it onto the big table. Well, he put one of the reels in upside down. So we stood up there in the booth while he's like taking this. He's like unspooling it.
That's funny.
So he can spin it around, and then he has to spin it back up. That was like kind of a cool like little experience because we were kind of hanging out. And I don't know where they went, but I had a couple 35 millimeter frames from the movie that I kept for the longest time, and they're gone now. I don't know. But anyway, so then we went downstairs and we missed like a fourth of the movie. And my friend Paul was like, well, I'm not going to watch this anymore. I'm saying, well, no, I'm going to stay and watch the rest of it. So I stayed and watched the rest of it and went back and watched it again in its entirety. But it's one of those great moments where people are just kind of like,
that's pretty funny.
What is this? What? So anyway, but aside from the amazing score, which another funny thing about, I actually bought the score, which Jared and I, we should do an episode. Well, I don't think we should do an episode, but Leonard Rosenman.
Rosenman.
Is that?
Yes, Rosenman.
Who did the score for Star Trek 4, which is terrible.
The Star Trek Christmas album.
Oh my god. And he did the score for RoboCop 2.
Yes, he did.
I found it at the used bookstore we used to go to all the time for $0.25. And I bought it and I returned it. I got my quarter back because it was so
dang
awful.
You didn't keep it even as like a horrible curiosity?
No, I mean, and there was Jared, I think, pointed me to an interview they had with him where he talked about how he hated.
He didn't like the
score for the
score
original, which is great.
Yes.
So he didn't bring any of the themes back.
No.
And at the end, there's that awful during the end credits where it's going.
I've heard that before. I've heard that.
And I'm like,
before.
you're like, when you're sitting there listening, you're like, what?
Are they chanting RoboCop?
Why would they do that? And that was apparently this guy's reputation. He would always trash. Didn't he do a Planet of the Apes score?
He did Planet of the. He did like the fourth one.
And he's like, oh man, Jerry Goldsmith's score is terrible.
Gosh.
Jeez, I sound like he was kind of a dick. But anyway, I like RoboCop 2. I think it's got some cool action, and I always like seeing Peter Weller. It's the last time you see him.
Yeah.
As RoboCop.
Oh, so far.
Dun dun.
Yeah, we'll see if they ever get that thing made. Well, I'm going to talk about a movie I know that Mike doesn't like. However, I do own it on Blu-ray. I do not defend it as a good film. And I'm talking about 1990's Psycho 4.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
The movie is terrible.
well, there are parts of it I like. I don't. It's actually one of the first things that popped into my head when Matt was like, "Do you want to talk about guilty pleasures?" I was like, "Holy crap, man! I got Psycho 4, directed by Mick Garris."
Mick Garris, you all know. I remember when we watched that movie.
Okay, in Nashville, we lived in Nashville in the early 2000s. Mike and his roommate Larry,
and Puyon, I think Puyon was there.
Okay, so they had never watched it. And they had seen the other Psycho movies, and they're like, well, no, I've never seen 4. And I was like, oh, I have it. And so I brought it over, and we watched it. And, man, I remember the instant hostility when it said directed by Mick Garris. And then, like, the whole room goes, oh, man. And I thought, at that time, I was like, what's wrong with Mick Garris? What's the big problem? And I was like, okay. And, so we proceeded to watch it. And then I felt like a chump for bringing it over to Mike's house because
I think we were making fun of it.
And I was like,
and poor Jared
hey.
was sitting in the being quiet because he likes the movie. We were like just ripping
this
on it.
Terrible. I mean, it's not good. I mean, I understand that. It's the 4th sequel of a.
Well, I will say I do own it on Blu-ray. As part of the Psycho collection. But I will say this. I tell you, the best part of that Blu-ray is the commentary.
Yes, the commentary.
Because
Henry Thomas
and Olivia
Hussey
are on it.
Pause on that. Olivia Hussey. Did anybody else besides me get forced to watch Romeo and Juliet in like high school?
Oh, yeah, of course.
In high school and sit there like this when everyone knows this and like.
Yeah, everybody knows the scene. Yeah,
I was out that day. I missed that day. I think the teacher made him skip past
Oh, man.
it.
They did not skip past in my class, and it was awkward, and we were just hoping to get a
Well, it's funny that you say that, because in the commentary, because she does a nude scene in Psycho 4, and she'd forgotten. So they're watching the movie on the commentary, and she's like, oh, my God, I forgot I did that.
I know. She goes, oh, I didn't know I showed my bits and bobs or something. And Henry Thomas, who played Elliot in E.T., he played young Norman in this movie. I mean, he sort of chuckles uncomfortably like, ha, ha, ha.
And Mick Garris is trying to be like, it's okay, it's fine, it's all right. It's like, yeah, sure, I'm sure you were. But the interesting, too, is whenever they would show the scenes with Anthony Perkins, you got to sense that he was not easy to work with.
He's no. There's several behind the scenes things on those films where he was, especially in the Psycho sequels in his later years, he was kind of difficult.
In Psycho 2, he tried to get the main girl fired.
Yeah, like who was that? Meg Tilly.
Yeah,
Meg Tilly was
Jennifer
her name.
Tilly's sister.
And she said she actually did an event this year or last year where she watched, she watched Psycho 2 as part of like some live stream thing that, and it's a Q&A type of deal. And it was the first time she'd actually ever watched the movie.
Oh, really?
And because, she said, she didn't have the greatest experience making it and she didn't really want to go back there. But yeah, so it took her like, 40 years to actually watch the finish.
That's amazing. That always fascinates me when you hear those stories that you hear like, I never watched it. Like I never watched it ever in my life when actors say that stuff. I just can't comprehend that they've never, they spend like all these months working on a movie and then they never watch it. It's just amazing to me.
Well, I mean, heck, Bill Shatner just recently said, I never watched the original series.
I didn't even know the names of my castmates.
Yeah. And of course, for years and years, he's like, oh, my favorite episode of the original series is Devil in the Dark, City on the Edge of Forever. But it's like, so did you mean you did watch them? I don't understand.
I think at the time he's referencing making.
It could be. But, he just recently said, I mean, of course, he is 91. Maybe he's losing it. But he's like, no, I've never watched it. I don't know.
You have to think it was different back then. They that was a job, and they went on to the next job.
Yeah,
that's true.
I will say this: I think the first of all, Psycho is just a classic standalone movie. But if you want some more Norman Bates, you could do a lot worse than Psycho 2 and 3.
Yeah, I think so. I do enjoy those sequels, and I enjoy them more than Part 4. But, I will watch Part 4 every once in a while, and I know it's terrible. And it came back to me because of the experience I had with Mike and our friends sitting around ridiculing me for bringing the movie to his house. So,
and I will say one of me and Jared's favorite moments in any movie is the end of Psycho 2 when he wallops that old woman in the head.
Or the shovel.
That's one of the most single amazing cinematic moments in the history of cinematic moments.
Bong.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
it's so unexpected and brutal.
He's just talking.
Because the whole movie, he's trying to not be a certain way, and then he just like, oh well, whatever. Bam.
I think we should round off this conversation. I'm just going to list a couple some honorable mentions and. So I think Conan the Destroyer.
Oh.
I absolutely loved as a kid. I still like it, and it's kind of awful.
Yeah.
Now I'm telling you, these are movies that were always being cycled on television as I was a kid, and I enjoyed them. Red Sonja with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh man, I am Calidor.
How are you? I'll teach you how to fight with a sword. Not like that.
I can't be Conan because of legal issues.
Exactly.
I am Calidor.
Red Sonja might be an episode to itself, and that's the one that Brigitte Nielsen ditched. What movie did she ditch? I think she ditched Cobra. She's supposed to be in Cobra.
No, she wasn't.
No, there's one. There was a movie she jumped out of to star in Red Sonja. That was gonna be her big break. I have to look back, look it up. But and then Krull. Krull is probably my best guilty pleasure, but I've talked enough about Krull on this podcast before, and I just think that Krull, for all of its fantastical nonsense, is a great movie and a fun movie that I enjoyed as a kid. And James Horner's trial of Star Trek II's thematics in that movie really probably was what made that movie memorable for me, because it has great music. And Krull 2, even if you never watched the movie, you would enjoy the soundtrack if you like James Horner. It's definitely in there.
Sure.
From Battle Beyond the Stars to Krull to Star Trek 2, you can see the maturation of how that theme kind of goes, perfecting it in Star Trek 2. But yeah, man, guilty pleasure movies.
Well, I got an honorable mention.
Go.
Punisher Warzone. You ever seen that?
Was that a recent one with the guy from The Walking Dead?
No, it's got Ray Stevens.
Okay, so no, I haven't seen it.
Man, I'm telling you, you haven't lived until you've watched Punisher Warzone. I'm not joking. This movie is so outrageous. It's so ridiculously violent. It's got one of the best moments in a movie ever. I mean, it's one of those movies I like to watch. Like, I watched it with my brother, and I didn't say anything, but the scene I'm talking about, he immediately responded to it. And after the movie was over, we went back and he watched it like 3 times in a row. It's not a good movie at all. But my gosh.
All right, another YouTuber. I'm going to find that scene on YouTube. And
No, watch it in the context of the movie. Don't do that. Don't do that.
I don't know if I have the time to do that.
Don't cheat yourself. Dude, I'm telling you, this movie is like, it's not entertaining. That's for sure. And Ray Stevens is a great Punisher. And, man, that movie's, man, I might just go watch that now. It's just, I'm telling you, your life is incomplete without a Punisher Warzone viewing.
All right.
Wow. I don't have any honorable mentions because everything else I like is top-notch quality.
I hope this podcast is some people's guilty pleasure.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it is. I mean, I'm sure you could say that. But you know what? Guilty pleasure or not, we're going to keep this steam train rolling right through the 25th century We're in season 6 now. We're well into it. We got some great shows coming up. What those are, you'll know as soon as we do. But anyway, thank you for joining us, and we will see you here next week in the 25th century.
You know you can't live without this content, so subscribe to the Hyperspace Podcasting in the 25th Century. Follow us on social media, leave us a review, and join us here next time as we take you into the 25th century.